what policies are required right now to see this through?
If you ask academics, they'll always say education is the most important thing. If you ask doctors, we'll solve the medical problem, all things. I'm sorry, that's not economics at all. The economics is about making trade-offs. A library that doesn't have an army is doomed to be burnt.
What are your thoughts on Make in India? Do you think it's working? Is it still evolving?
We are not tolerant of shoddy products in the name of Make in India. We import a lot of inputs, and without those inputs, in fact, Make in India wouldn't even be possible.
How do you define the Indian economy today? Are we still emerging or are we challenging global norms?
From the Vajpayee era onwards, we began to do in the intra-city infrastructure. We are now beginning to do in the intra-city infrastructure. Then one big area that we need to do something about is our judicial system. You can't have this tariq pe tariq kind of system.
तारीख पर तारीख, तारीख पर तारीख, तारीख पर तारीख, तारीख पर तारीख मिलती रही है, लेकिन इंसाफ नहीं मिला मिलोड, इंसाफ नहीं मिला, मिली है तो सिर्फ ये तारीख.
What's going to dominate more, the services sector or the manufacturing sector? And what's good for India?
95% of our goods can't go in and out because we are dependent on. We are at war or we face sanctions or something like that happens. India only has 481. And just to put it in context, China has 6,000.
India is known to be one of the youngest countries in terms of population worldwide.
And there were 29 million children who were born in the year 2001. After that, it has dramatically declined. We are now at 23 million and falling rapidly.
Why would a declining birth rate affect any economy?
So, if their birth rate does not go up in about a decade or two, they will not be able to keep many of their universities running. They will not be able to keep municipal services running. Schools will have to shut down, already happening in parts of India.
That's scary.
Nobody in the world really knows the answer to this, but it's a young man's business.
Namaste and welcome to this episode of the OddCast show. This platform was set up by my son and me to talk about stuff that's odd but relevant. No topic is taboo on our podcast, and I'm sure a lot of you are liking our content. Please like, share, subscribe, comment and hype our content to help us grow further. Well, today's episode is a little unique because there's a lot of talk about whether our economy is dead or are we actually thriving. One section says that we are a dead economy. The other section says that we are really thriving. And to discuss this today, we are joined by Sanjeev Sanyal ji, who is on the Economic Advisory Committee to our Honorable PM. He's also a historian and author, and also the Chancellor for Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics, which is so famous in Pune. So welcome Sanjeev ji, namaste. Welcome to the show. How are you feeling?
Namaste. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So we've been chasing you since a year. And finally you're here. So now please give us some time and don't rush out. I know you got your lovely hiking pants on and your shoes, and I know it looks like you're going on a hike this evening. But what's up with the pants? They're damn cool.
No, it's a monsoon in Pune and there are lots of hills around. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't go out hiking.
Lovely. So sir, since it's economics, I'm going to ask you straight up, how do you define the Indian economy today? Are we still emerging or are we challenging global norms?
Of course, we are still emerging. Well, at some level, all economies are always emerging because, economics is about continuous change. But at our level, while we have now just surpassed Japan to become the world's fourth largest economy, and about, some 24 odd months, we'll probably go past Germany to become the world's third largest economy. Let me say that it is also the case that we are still very poor in per capita terms. So, in that sense, we have a long way to go. Whether it's in terms of increasing the quality of people's lives, the infrastructure, protecting the environment, all kinds of other things, this is certainly an economy that is still emerging. And so, for all our successes, we should not lose track of the fact that we still have a long way to go.
So where do you see the change coming from? From what policies are required right now to see this through, or to try and aspire to be where we want to be?
So obviously there is a long list of things we need to do. So there is no one magic bullet. Do this and solve education and everything will be solved. So in fact, I want to emphasize this because a lot of people in casual conversation will come up with their most favorite topic, whatever it is. So if you ask academics, they'll always say education is the most important thing. If you ask, the doctors, oh, we'll solve the medical problem, all things. I'm sorry, that's not economics at all. The economics is about making trade-offs, about understanding that this is an ecosystem, an economy is an ecosystem, and things feed into each other. So solving one thing very well does not get you anywhere. And in any case, you have only limited resources. So there's only so much you can do in different fields. And if you try and solve one and don't sort of solve others, things will break down. I mean, there's no point in building a great education system and not investing in the military. If you want to know what happens if you don't do it properly, well, look at Nalanda.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I keep telling people a library that doesn't have an army is doomed to be burnt. So you have to invest in the whole array of things, but of course, there's limited resources. So therefore, the entire field of economics is about making a complex set of trade-offs. And of course, different trade-offs make different levels of sense at different points in time. So since you asked me what are the things we need to do going from here, let's look at what are the problems we have sort of solved so far. If you went back a decade ago, you would have told me that the economy desperately needs infrastructure, our airports are not up to speed, highways don't get there, these kinds of issues. That is a problem we have at least partly solved, or at least we know how to solve what is left. So our airports are now, to at least to large extent, world class. Some parts of our highways are world class. Other parts we know how to do it.
Are getting there.
Are getting there, or at least we have shown that we know what to do. So it's a matter of getting it done. Similarly, now we're investing in our ports. They used to be very inefficient. They're now much more efficient. Not the most efficient in the world, but we are getting there. We are certainly one of the better countries for ports. So I think physical infrastructure is something, in terms of intercity connectivity, we have cracked it. What we haven't done is intracity infrastructure. So the infrastructure inside cities, we still lack a lot. Now here, that is a completely different kind of investment. Okay, and it in some ways requires much more management than just investment. So, for example, garbage clearance, potholes. Why is it more about management? Well, because you have to keep the city running while you fix the pothole. In a highway, you just build the highway. In a running city in the middle, in an extremely densely packed area, managing the process of doing the reform is doing the infrastructure build out is actually more complicated than the actual building of the road. That might be the most trivial and easy thing to do.
Correct.
So let's give you an example. Mumbai, till very recently, basically functioned on 2 roads and 2 train lines.
Right.
Those train lines were built by the British, and we have been kept on running it. You couldn't do anything with it because you couldn't ever shut them to upgrade them because you had to shut down the city. There were 2 highways, one on the east side, one on the west side. And we did occasionally build a few flyovers, but basically that was all one of the largest cities in the world was functioning on 2 train lines and 2 highways. Now, very recently, we have begun to do it differently. Of course, a lot of effort went into it. We have finally built the coastal road. We have built a new airport on the mainland, which is coming on stream, but we have already built the links through with Atal Setu. The metro station, bits of it are open, but we built 13 metro lines in one shot. And line number 3, which is some parts of it are open, but when it opens fully, will basically be a major 3rd line addition and much more efficient than the existing 2 ones. So, point I'm making is we are getting there we are also now beginning to do what we did from the Vajpayee era onwards. We began to do in the intra-city infrastructure. We are now beginning to do in the intra-city infrastructure. But here also, we have to be serious about what we do. So there are certain debates we now need to have. For example, what to do about stray animals. This doesn't require big investment. But every day you read newspapers, you'll see, car has smashed into some stray animal, or stray dogs have attacked and killed somebody. All kinds of these. Now we need to get serious about this, and and get beyond this, black and white argument, oh, you are a animal lover or not. After all countries in the world manage strays, and we need to have a reasonable solution to this. So this is one big gamut of areas. So moving from the physical infrastructure of connecting cities to the infrastructure inside cities and villages as well. So the intra-habitation infrastructure. Here, we have made a little bit better progress in certain areas. For example, the toilets got built. It's not infrastructure between parts of the city, it's inside one home, but still getting tapped water to people's homes. Those are things getting sorted. But I think we now need to get serious about looking after the looking after the intra-city infrastructure. And a very important part of that has to be citizen participation.
Driven, right.
Citizen driven, because in the end, there's no point in collecting garbage if people keep throwing garbage. So this is not only about the government, but about the wider society participating. So this is one big area of reform: municipal, intra-city infrastructure management, that whole ecosystem of things. Then one big area that we need to do something about is our judicial system. So all modern successful economies are about enforcement of contracts and about law and order. Now this is somewhere where we are clearly failing. This is a big institution of government. It's been given a lot of, for good reason, given independence. But then you need to see, reform within judiciary. You can't have this tariq pe tariq kind of system.
Absolutely.
After 20, 30 years, you will hear, major riot happened in the 1980s, and now in 2025, you are seeing
the verdict
verdict has happened with the, in the case of the Sikh riots. I mean, we are now seeing, you've got to be kidding me. So I think we need to get serious about the whole judicial process. And here I'm not just talking about just the judiciary. There's a whole ecosystem that we need to clean up, which includes the way the lawyer system, the bar council functions, the tribunals function, the processes, and there's a whole bunch of things that we need to clean up. So I would say, if you ask me, two big areas that needs municipal management and the judiciary. I mean, there are all kinds of other things we can also discuss.
Of course.
Cleaning up and improving the bureaucracy, blah, blah, blah. But I would say these two would be the biggest ones that I would advocate.
I really appreciate that, you brought out the judicial, changes that the judiciary needs, because it's such a big problem. Small people, young, people who are poor, etc., they have small cases, small matters. They have to come and wait for days and months to get a date. And it just goes on progressing.
And then when the date turns up, they will just postpone it.
They'll just give another date.
Yeah. So this kind of tariq pe tariq thing has got to stop. And we've done it for a long time. This tariq pe tariq thing, of course, was discussed, if I'm not mistaken, in the 70s. We've got to move on from that now.
Right. But so, one of the things that you all have done really, really efficiently and very, very well and beautifully, I would say, is the introduction of the e-way bill facility that has been done for the trucking industry. And I'm from the trucking industry. That's what I do as a family business. And in that, when I joined the business in 2001, I knew for a fact that the trucking transit time from Pune to Calcutta in those days used to be 9 days. And out of that, when I mapped it, I saw that 4 days the trucks were actually idling at state check borders. And then along came, your reform of just the e-way bill, where all the data of that truck, whatever it's carrying, the freight, etc., everything is on a smart card, and you just swipe it on the border and go. And now the turnaround time from Pune, Calcutta is that in 9 days, the truck is back. So my efficiency has doubled in the same transit time by doing nothing. Just a simple reform from the government. So that's what's happened here. So I think that's a great thing that you've done.
No, many reforms, good reforms have happened. The GST system, for example.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying it can't be improved. There are many inefficiencies in it. But when you compare it to where we were, it's a major leap forward. And the same you can say for the insolvency and bankruptcy code. The cleanup of the banks. People thought our banking system was going to fall apart. But in fact, now we have one of the best capitalized and most robust banking systems in the world. So it's not like we can't make major changes. We do, and we have done. Similarly, inflation. People, still complain about price rises. But in fact, the fact of the matter is, in general, inflation has now been well behaved for almost a decade. You go back and look at any of our history, inflation always spiking around. It was normal to have inflation in the 8 to 12% range.
Yeah.
Now, as we speak, inflation is at 2%.
Yeah. That's insane.
Yeah, people don't realize what that means. Yeah.
So people have a short-term memory, I mean, like they don't look at what was there 20 years ago. They look at what's now, and then they say, okay, now. And in fact, I'm glad that you brought up in your previous conversation with us about the civic sense topic, that a lot of things have to be citizen-driven. And there, I wanted to highlight a small thing, sir, which disturbed me a lot. And that was when the government organized National or World Yoga Day, International Yoga Day. And the next day, there were reels showing that people are fighting for the mats and beating the life out of each other to steal those mats. So somebody actually commented that, India should also, the government should actually introduce a National Civic Sense Day, to teach people.
Perhaps we should instead go even further and make that a National Mixed Martial Arts Day the next day.
What are your thoughts on Make in India? Do you think it's working? Is it still evolving? Do you see a future in it?
So, Make in India is a general way of thinking about the fact that we want to have, first of all, understand what it means. What we are not trying to do is to go back to 1950s import substitution.
Right.
Okay. We want to make in India because we want to be a part of the global supply chain. We want to make in India because there are certain areas where we think they have strategic importance. But at the same time, we want to make sure whatever we are doing is world class. So we are not trying to build ambassador cars. It is not a good idea to go back to the old world of licenses and permits and all those other inefficiencies, or in most cases, although sometimes it's needed, public sector enterprise. If that is the context of Make in India, let me say that we are trying to do Make in India in order to make ourselves as a globally competitive, outward-oriented economy. Okay. Now that you're clear what it means, there are many areas where Make in India has succeeded. There are certain areas where we have succeeded internally for our own interest. For example, defense sector. Defense sector had really faltered for years, but now, as you saw in Operation Sindoor, our equipment is not bad.
It's world class.
Yeah, it's certain parts of it are world class. Not all of it, but some class. This is just one example. Similarly, when taking global supply chains into account, Apple is a commonly given example, but there are many areas where, for example, India has done very well as becoming almost like an office to the world. Every major company in the world now has a GCC in India, and they are not just doing what the old BPO type work that they are just answering phone calls or something like that. No, this is cutting edge work that they are doing. It's logistics, law, accounts. Sometimes the front office work is also done out of India. Now, in that context, let me say Make in India has worked in certain areas. Has it worked in every area? No. And we shouldn't either. But the idea behind it is to get people, first of all, to understand that we can compete, and that while we will provide support, like for example PLI schemes, etc., it is also very clear that we are not tolerant of shoddy products in the name of Make in India. So I do not want to go back to ambassador cars ever again. Okay? Just in the name of. So yes, some protection will be provided, but over time, as we sign more FTAs and other things, that protection will ease off. We can't, there's no point in trying to protect each and every sector. We will try and do where there's strategic importance, or if it's a sector where we think we have competitive edge. But for many others, we'll just have to trade with other countries which have where we have free trade agreement, or even not. I mean, after all, even as we are building up Make in India, we are trading with China of all countries. And we import a lot of inputs, and without those inputs, in fact, Make in India wouldn't even be possible in many sectors. So this is a much more pragmatic view of what Make in India is, without, as I said, trying to saddle ourselves with license permit Raj or shoddy products.
Right.
So another indicator of any solid economy or robust economy or growing economy has always been, the shift from manufacturing to services. And in India, we see a lot of unicorns coming out of the service sector also. What's your view on this in the next 10, 20, 30 years? What's going to dominate more, the services sector or the manufacturing sector? And what's good for India?
So first of all, in a country which is as big as ours, I don't think you can do one or not the other. It's not the case, we'll do only manufacturing. We have 1.4 billion people. About 1 billion of those are in working age or shortly will be. And so we need the whole array of things, which will include agriculture too, by the way.
Absolutely.
Even if its share is shrinking, it will include construction, manufacturing, and other utilities. It'll also have services. But yes, we have become a services-driven economy somewhat earlier than was the case in the past. There are two reasons for this. One is, of course, that for historical reasons, our infrastructure and our sort of red tape system was much more attuned towards basically restraining our goods sector. So that when we began to open up in the 90s, it took us a long time to get the infrastructure up there. The mindset of doing comparative manufacturing took a long time to build up. So it turned out that we expanded into services because there were lesser restrictions there. And the second reason is that we happened to be going through a high growth phase at a time of history when services became exportable. So if a country had attempted, say Japan had attempted in the 1960s to export services in the way we are exporting services, they simply wouldn't be able to do it. Today you can do it. So already is the case that our services exports exceed our goods exports. That would not have been the case with, say, Japan or Taiwan or whatever when they were industrializing. So because of both these factors, one is the negative factors of the restrictions we had, and the positive factors that a time of history where technology is allowing us to export services, we have become heavily dominated by services. I have no problem with that. But I do not think it is healthy for India not to build out a manufacturing sector. So there are areas where we can compete. I'm quite confident, and we are demonstrating that in electronics. But there are other set of pharmaceuticals. We are world-class pharmaceuticals. And now we are trying to build out other sectors. I'll give you the example of shipbuilding. Shipbuilding is a sector where we should be doing very well. Okay. We have a long coastline. We ourselves have a need for ships. But 95% of our goods imports and exports are essentially done on foreign ships. Now, this is a huge vulnerability because imagine a situation where we are at war or we face sanctions or something like that happens, and we end up essentially 95% of our goods can't go in and out because we are dependent on foreign ships. Now, that's a dangerous situation. And I keep telling people that from an economic perspective, we are actually an island.
Correct.
Yeah, because we don't trade on our northwestern border with Pakistan at all. And with China, although we trade, we do not trade with the part of China that we have a border with. Right?
It's the sea route.
It's the sea route we use. So when you're looking at India, the entire goods trade basically goes in and out by sea. We are as much an island nation as Britain or Japan from an economic perspective. So ships is something that we should focus on. And yet, India only has 481 ships of any size for doing trade. I'm keeping out fishing trawlers and stuff, but ships of any size for doing large-scale trade. That is just too few. And just to put it in context, China has 6,000.
That's crazy.
And yes, and we hardly build any ships in this country. Now, this is a strange situation because we actually have the technology for building ships. So not only do we need ships, we actually have the technology for building ships. There are very, very few countries in the world that can build nuclear submarines. We can build them.
Yeah.
There are very few countries in the world which can build aircraft carriers. We know how to build them. But for some reason, we don't build tankers, which are much simpler to build. Similarly, what are the other inputs you need for shipbuilding? You need steel.
We have that.
Thousands of hours of steel welding is what ships need. You need labor. It's an extremely labor intensive. In fact, it's a young man's business. Even old men and women cannot do this because it's basically about lifting large numbers of sheets of metal and welding them. Tens of thousands of hours of welding. That's what a ship brings. So we have the cheap labor, we have the steel, we have the coastline, we have our own needs, we have the design capability, and yet we don't build ships.
But what could be the reason, sir? Why?
So there are many reasons. There are problems with our own regulations. We used to over-regulate our own shipbuilding. We did not give enough orders from the government side, although we are now more recently been giving more Navy orders, but others. We didn't create a national fleet, for example. We had very complicated rules on ship ownership, on ship flagging, and for reasons best known to previous generations of policymakers, ships were not categorized as infrastructure.
Really?
This is a major issue, because do remember that what is a ship? A ship basically gives you back money over 30 years. Okay. It's a very expensive asset. Large tanker is a very expensive asset. It gives you back returns over 30 years, because some years you'll make money, some years you'll lose money because Baltic spikes up and down.
Correct.
So it's about cheap financing over 30 years. Now, if you are not categorized as infrastructure and you don't get not just money, but you also need insurance,
Correct.
then you can't even enter this game. So all of these things are getting fixed, and so let's see how this sector pans out. But I'm just giving you a flavor that there are many areas of manufacturing that we can actually do quite well.
So, sir, you mentioned that around 1 billion out of the 1.4 billion people of India are of working age or are going to be of working age very soon. And India is known to be one of the youngest countries in terms of population worldwide. How do you see this playing out as an advantage in the long run?
Well, obviously, we need to absorb them into some useful work. Otherwise, do remember that demographic advantage does not last forever. It will last for 25 odd years from here. So around about 2050 onwards, we will also age like all other countries. So first of all, we are not the youngest country in the world. There are countries much younger than us: Philippines, Pakistan, Nigeria, just to name a few. We are just happen to be the ones that are entering the demographic dividend phase, which will last for 25, 30 odd years, no more. Our own birth rates have crashed.
Yeah.
Right.
We are now not producing enough children. So somewhere at the end of this 25 years, we too will age just like everybody else. So we have to make hay during these 25 years. Otherwise, we will miss the bus. So hence the first point being made is that we need to get our act together and really take advantage of these 25 years and get the economy up there where we want it to be. And there are many things we need to do, but one of the things we need to do is to drive growth. I'm not saying that we should try and push for 8% growth, 10% growth every year. We won't be able to manage that. But at least under circumstances where the macroeconomics is reasonably stable, the external environment is stable, we should try to maximize growth to the extent possible. The good news is that there are many things falling in place for this. One was, I told you about our infrastructure falling in place. Secondly, there are parts of the economy that are genuinely world-class now. Parts of the IT sector, parts of our pharmaceutical sector, now some part, more recently, electronic sector, defense, and so on. So we need to build on those things. But there are areas where we're simply not doing anything much, where they're low-hanging fruit. I mean, take, for example, tourism. We could just be driving in, forget foreign tourists, even our own tourists. Yeah. We can leverage them a lot more than we today do. There was a time when, for example, you saw expensive places, not just in India but abroad. They were very rarely find Indian tourists in an expensive resort.
Right.
Now you go anywhere in the world, you'll find them. Even in India, if you go to the most expensive palace hotels, let's say in Rajasthan, I remember till not very recently, there would be hardly any Indians who were there. All basically foreign tourists from Europe or somewhere would be coming and paying those high. Now it's all Indians, and they're paying top dollar literally for weddings and other such things, and some really high-end stuff, I have to say. But we have not been able to take it to the next level. And we really need to get our act together. If we are in Pune, within 2 hours drive of this place, there's some phenomenal forts. But how many of them have been converted into top-notch tourist destinations?
None.
So we need to begin to think about this and leverage these things much, much more than we do. Similarly, but it requires a somewhat different way of thinking about all of this than we have historically had. So first of all, we need to preserve those locations as experiences. Unfortunately, one of the big problems in India is, and I feel afraid of sometimes even mentioning a good tourist location, because not so long after I mention it, the state tourism department discovers it and builds an ugly PWD construction right in front of it.
Oh God.
Well, you have all seen this. So this PWD architecture problem is a very serious problem that we have, and it requires us to really think about the aesthetics of some of the things we do. So, this requires rewiring our entire idea of what good architecture is, how we deal with tourist sites, how we manage them. There's the whole civic sense angle to it.
Absolutely.
You'll go to a nice, beautiful site, and there'll be water bottles lying around, and sometimes it's not the government's fault at all. In the end, there has to be a level of pride that we, the people of India, have towards our sites.
So, sir, you mentioned something very interesting, and I'm again just going off track. You mentioned that our birth rates are crashing, and while India is entering a sweet spot area where we'll have a very large young population that is capable of doing a lot of things, we are going to probably miss out on that after 25, 30 years. It's going to last for only 25, 30 years, is what you mentioned. What's the policy for increasing our birth rates, number one, if possible, if you can share something on that, and how does it affect the economy? Like, why would a declining birth rate affect any economy? Is a layman's question.
I'll tell you why these are important. Because, as I said, when we too will at some point begin to see declines in populations. So, first of all, I think people don't understand how advanced we are down this path. The peak rate of the peak number of births in India peaked 25 years ago.
Really?
In 2001, when there were 29 million children who were born in the year 2001. After that, it has dramatically declined. We are now at 23 million and falling rapidly.
Wow.
So you must remember that we are well past the point where the peak number of children were born. Secondly, those children are now entering the workforce. That is where your demographic dividend is coming from.
Right.
But do remember that the pipeline after that shrinks dramatically.
Right.
Okay. And of course, in other countries, it's really dramatically shrunk. Just to give you some sense, in China, so we are seeing ours has gone from 29 down to 22, 23, somewhere in that range. China is now to 9 million births per year. So that has really crashed and is still falling. Okay. So these things can be very dramatic declines. And Korea, for example, now has a fertility rate which is 1/3 of what is needed for keeping a population stable. So if their birth rate does not go up in about a decade or two, their population begin declining so fast that they will not be able to keep many of their universities running. They will not be able to keep municipal services running. Schools will have to shut down and you'll have to be converged. Now, if you think that this sort of thing cannot happen to India, let me say it's already happening in parts of India.
That's scary.
Yes. There are places in Kerala, there are places in Himachal where, and you need this because you need to begin to combine schools to just keep them running. You need to begin rethinking how you think about pensions. How are pensions paid by and large? By and large, by taxing the current workers to pay those who are retiring.
Correct.
Now, if you promise large number of people, large number of pensions, and you have a shrinking youth into the future, what will happen? Those people,
there will be a lot of trouble.
First of all, they'll be taxed at rates that are very high because they're having to not only burden their own burden, but the burden of other people. And now what will happen? Those young people will say, why should I work here? They will try move out of those areas, maybe go abroad or whatever, or not work, because you'll make their work decision low. If I keep taxing people, they'll stop working. So you will go down a spiral, which is very dangerous. So you have to remember the dynamics of a shrinking population are very different from those of a growing population. Now, we are still nowhere there, but I'm just pointing out to you that we will eventually get there. So we should be very, very careful of promising large amounts of pensions to people, because ultimately it's our children who will have to pay for it. And the levels of taxation required to do that will really jam up and disincentivize working in the future. Not today, but in the future. So there is one important thing. Do not load on debt on all kinds of, cheap subsidies of various kinds. do remember that the population that will have to repay those debts will be shrinking. So, there are all kinds of things and all of these problems are not theoretical problems. Europe already faces this.
Yeah, Japan.
Japan is beginning to face this as well. So, you will see this over the next decade or so playing out there. But remember, they will also eventually play down for here. Now, what do we do about stabilizing population birth rates? Well, it's a very tricky question. Nobody in the world has so far been able to revive birth rates. Even in the Nordic countries where it has stabilized far below the replacement rate.
The required norm.
Yes, so it's stabilized, but below what is needed to stabilize the economy. It's no longer falling. But, that doesn't solve the problem, even if it's not as bad as Korea. Eventually, the Danish population will also shrink. So, nobody in the world really knows the answer to this. But in India, what is happening is at least a few states are keeping the national average up a little bit. That's UP and Bihar. And, there are parts of the country where people complain, we are seeing migrants coming from there and so on. But do remember that if there weren't migrants coming out of UP and Bihar, we would already be at a very low level of income. We would already be facing massive labor shortages. For example, you go to Tamil Nadu. Keeping their textile hub going in Tirupur is entirely dependent on workers from Bihar and UP.
Right.
There are many parts of the economy already in Maharashtra. You may not realize this. Maharashtra birth rate is only a little bit better than is the case in southern India.
Wow.
So you actually need these workers to come here.
Absolutely.
And rather than complain about UP and Bihar, we need to find a social consensus on how to increase birth rates, go up again. Now, this is, as I said, no country in the world has on a sustained basis managed to increase their birth rates. After all, China is aware of this. The Japanese have tried. Nothing has so far worked. So I don't know what the solution is. I'm just telling you that it is a tricky problem. At the very least, we need to shut down all our population control programs. I mean, even if we can't solve the problem, why add to it?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's brilliantly put. I had another question, sir, where you mentioned that one of the factors that affects an economy is, like you said, birth rates. But I want to go on that. You also mentioned that when there are a lot of too many old people, also you are paying a lot of pension, and you said we should be careful in providing freebies to people. So now, if I flip this question and come to elections, and when there are state elections, a lot of politicians go out and start promising freebies, like free bus ride for women, free this, free that. How does that work out, and how does that play out? Because
as I said, this should not be blamed on politicians. If the people of a country want these freebies, then don't blame the politicians for providing it. In the end, every people get the kings they deserve. So if the people of this country want freebies, then don't blame the politicians for providing it. The fact is that as a people, we Indians need to be clear that all this freebies that we are getting is only against some debts we are running up.
Correct.
Those debts will eventually have to be repaid by our kids only. In one way or the other, either by giving back the money or through inflation. Either which way, it's the same thing. So there is no such thing as a free lunch in economics. So ultimately, somebody pays for it. So if you are getting a free lunch, if you think you're getting a free lunch through some freebie, do remember that is you will pay for it somewhere.
It's like karma then.
It is in fact like karma.
Sir, speaking of so many good things that India has done for its own economy and succeeded in doing so far, why do you think that so many political and foreign figures, not to name anybody specifically, why do you think they still underestimate our economy so much?
Look, first of all, we ourselves don't punch at our own weight. I mean, tiny country like Singapore punches way above its weight. So historically, we have not been assertive. So that's one part of it. But the other thing is that, look, if we are emerging as a threat to other countries and creating our own space on the world, you should expect other people to push back because they are effectively vacating space for you. It's the same thing that happens socially. Whenever you see, for example, the new rich emerge on the scene, the old rich will always say, oh yeah, he's got money, but he doesn't speak the right accent or doesn't know how to use churi kata while eating, and he doesn't drink the right wine. So we should thicken our skin and just carry on. Because the new rich will always be looked down upon by the old rich.
Right.
It is okay. We shouldn't get emotional about this at all. And we should punch at our own weight. Sometimes there will be pushback against us, in whatever way, whether it's in terms of editorials in New York Times or Washington Post, whatever. It's okay. We should, in fact, consider it a good thing. That means that we are a threat. After all, nobody writes nasty things about people who are not a threat. Then they will write condescending articles about how wonderful you are. But in fact, what they are doing is, looking down on you.
Correct.
Right.
But so are we shaping a new world order now? Is that what's happening here because of
We
all
are
this?
certainly becoming a more important player in the world order. Are we shaping it? Well, not quite shaping it yet, but we are certainly important participants. And if we, by the end of this decade, emerge quite clearly as the world's third largest economy, presumably still growing, being the fastest growing, then we will be in a position to begin to shape it too. But it is an aspiration still, but an aspiration that is no longer unreasonably expected. But all of this requires that we as a people hold things together, because you see, there will be shocks along the way. And we just went through COVID crisis. Many other things will happen. We are having currently all these tariff wars going on the planet. Other things may turn up. We fought a war, short one, but with Pakistan.
But effective one.
But the point is, all kinds of random things will happen.
Absolutely, of course.
You may get a gigantic earthquake and a tsunami. You could see all kinds of, another pandemic happening.
Correct.
I have no way of predicting it. But holding it together through good times and bad is what makes great countries and great civilizations. So I think the important thing here is that we as a people, for all the differences we may have amongst ourselves, are able to hold this together and keep moving forward. And that is very, very important.
Beautiful. So I saw you looking at your watch, and I know that you are a very, very busy person and you have to run and shape our policies for our economy. But may I have another 5 more minutes with you?
Yeah, okay, sure.
So there's a question that's burning in my heart that I want to ask on behalf of my son. And this
Okay.
is our final question. Then he'll move into the rapid fire. We're going to ask you 10 hard-hitting questions. But my question is that, he's now 20. He's going to the US to study. All right, the typical Indian boy, who's been brought up in a convent educated school, then looking to go abroad, the American dream, work there, or probably, study there and then work there or something like that. Why would and me as a father, I love him a lot. I want him back here. I feel that India is the great big story of this century. What's your thought on that? How do I convince him or other kids like him to come back to India and contribute here?
Well, I don't know him well enough, so I can't comment for
But
him.
work
But
in
let
India,
me say,
maybe.
let me say that, look, the opportunities here are immense. There are, India is simply growing at a rate that is at a far faster rate than Western countries are. I personally think that, and after having given everybody a big lecture on the importance of getting your hands dirty and being on the shop floor, I would say that finish your degree as soon as possible and get on to the shop floor. In fact, if you're in the logistics and trucking business, you should force him to actually drive a truck back and forth a few times and figure out how that works. That is far more important as an education than any MBA could possibly teach you. So I am a big believer in being knee deep in the trenches and working out how things will go. Things will move so quickly, and the opportunities will appear so fast that unless you're in the trenches yourself, you will not be able to figure out what those are. But then at the same time, those opportunities are immense. I mean, there are entire new businesses that will emerge, which I don't know what they are. But it will be your generation that will build it. And if you don't build it, somebody else will build it. So I think the game is to be in there, doing the cutting edge. And in the end, what is it for? To have to build the next level of things. It's the adventure of doing all of this. That is really what drives, drives people. Neither you or I, have a difficulty paying for our next meal. So why am I getting up every morning and working for so many hours? Because I genuinely believe in the energy that I see around me, and I want to participate in it and contribute to it.
Beautiful. But so you mentioned the word that I should force him to, get into this.
Yeah, force is a very simple word. I mean, force meaning in the sense that if he doesn't want to do it, of course he won't.
Because, you have a son, you're a father,
Yes.
and, can this generation be forced into anything?
No. Forced is maybe the wrong word, but if it should be encouraged, maybe. But
Yeah.
whatever. What he wants to do, I don't know. But I do encourage my kids to take big risks.
Yeah.
In fact, I force it because I make it clear that beyond a certain point, the money will be switched off.
Right.
So, they have to then earn their living at some point. So, yes. So in that sense, yes. My elder son, for example, does something quite risky,
Yeah.
which is mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
He's a two-time national champion. He represents India.
He's also in the top 3 in the world, I think, right? Or top 4.
I think at one point he was the top 5, but he's dropped off that because of an injury. But anyway, my other son, he's writing a book. He's into music, so they are doing different things. But I do want them to take big risks. That I will force them to do. I am sometimes not encouraging of things if I feel that they're doing it because it's the latest fashion. In fact, in my elder son's case, I thought he was doing this MMA thing just because it sounds cool. But then once I got the hang that he was doing it. So many people may ask, did you encourage him from the beginning? No, I didn't. But not because it's risky. I myself like risk. I mean, I myself have India's first paragliding pilot's license. I'm myself a martial arts guy. I'm a black belt in Taekwondo. I've pioneered, yeah, and I've pioneered many sports: whitewater rafting, kayaking, canoeing, all these things. I'm fully certified in all these sports. So risk was not the reason. I just wasn't sure he was serious about it. I just thought it looked cool. It meant going to the gym and
It's a
looking
phase,
good.
he'll get over it.
Yeah, and therefore I was not encouraging because I like people to be serious about what they do. So now that I know he's serious about MMA, go for it. What I don't want him is to be, pretty boy goes to the gym. Yeah, that's not my thing. Okay. The same thing was about my younger son. I mean, he's right now writing a book. He backpacked across the country.
Wow.
For some time, and now he's producing music. Again, I'll support him up to a point, but at some point he's got to go out there and produce something that is consequential and not just self-indulgent recordings in studios just for the heck of it or just sort of making by. At some point he's got to be able to cross
Absolutely.
to where whatever he's doing has to be done at a serious level.
Right. But since you mentioned so much about sport, and you yourself are into sport, and so many other sports that you're into, this is a whole sports room, and this room is actually dedicated to sport. It's for the it's dedicated to football. So I'm sure that now this makes more sense. I think I find you very, very cool that you're the first economist who I've ever even thought would be thinking about sport or even talking about sport. So that's really, really great. And I think I'm going to take Suved on now and let him start the rapid fire. We'll be just done in 2 minutes.
Okay.
Yes, sir. First question is Indian economy in one word.
Dynamic.
Okay.
What makes a country truly rich, sir? Mindset or discipline?
Well, both. They can't be separated. I would say mindset, yes, of risk taking, but then taking that risk and surviving it needs discipline.
Okay.
What's one thing you think India is doing right for its future?
I think there's a lot of energy here that is undeniable, especially if you travel the rest of the world. We go to Europe, for example, you can feel that there is a clear loss of energy. That is not the case here. I mean, even if you think whatever that person is doing is rubbish, you cannot deny the amount of energy that goes into a lot of the activity. I mean, the sheer amount of energy you see through most of India is just, it's quite infectious, actually.
Right. Sure. So one country whose economy you closely monitor?
China. I think they're doing some really amazing things. Of course, they have a serious demographic problem, and I don't know how they'll get around it. But meanwhile, they're doing some really innovative things, whether it's the cutting edge of technology or in the incredible ways in which they capture markets. You may not like it, but I mean the way they have gone about the world, thinking about the world strategically is quite extraordinary. And I would not also write off the US. The US has an amazing way to self-renew itself, sometimes in ways that may seem sort of idiosyncratic at the time, but it has an amazing history of renewing itself, which I would not write off.
Okay, wonderful.
One governmental policy in India that you think will age the best in the next 10 years?
Heavy investment into the judiciary. If we go for it, I think the judiciary really needs to be upgraded.
Bharat's biggest strength this century? What is our biggest strength?
I think a break away from the old mindset where we always felt that other people did cool things. For the first time, and I think hundreds of years, Indians have really begun to think of themselves as winners.
What is one big money myth that you wish Indians would stop believing?
The idea that somehow wise people sitting in wise positions of power know what the future will look like. They don't.
So one thing citizens often misunderstand about how a government runs an economy or shapes an economy.
I think there is still embedded in a lot of India's mindset is the Mai Baap Sarkar idea. So although we have given up almost 30 years ago this whole idea of socialism, in many parts we still have a lingering idea of Mai Baap Sarkar. Every time there is some problem, the default is the government should introduce some rule, law, etc., ban it or make it compulsory, and that will solve the problem. It should be clear to people as citizens of the country that every time you give up powers to the government, there is a high danger it will be misused against you. Do not give up your rights and powers to the government, even if it makes some small sense in a localized kind of way. Because ultimately all of this will accumulate and get in the way of further progress.
All right.
One reform you wish happened 10 years ago?
I wish we had begun to clean up our cities and build better intra-city infrastructure. But the good news is that finally we are having real discussions about it, at least in some parts of the country.
So if Bharat was a startup today, what would its tagline be?
Innovate.
Okay, innovate. Okay, lovely, lovely. So, sir, I would like to thank you for your time and for being so patient with us. And I'm glad that the economy is not dead, as a lot of people are saying, around us. I'm glad that it's alive and thriving and kicking. And I'm glad the way you've shared your info with us. My final question to you, sir, is that if you were given a choice by us to do a podcast with us or go on a hike, what would you choose?
Go on a hike.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. Namaste and Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.
Thank you.